The smile dissolved. His eyes turned inward as if remembering a forgotten past. "Actually, I'm from Chile. My father had the first vineyard there. They called him King of the Grapes. But then he got into the armament business." He paused. It was as if unable to break away from some memory. "That changed him. There are many stories to tell about those days." The corners of his mouth tightened. He blinked, as if he'd just become aware of her again. When his eyes settled languorously on her, she was glad she had picked a splashy hibiscus and tucked it behind her ear. Under his inspection, she gave a toss of her head, her rich, dark hair swinging to one side in endless, thick strands. She was used to tourists taking note of her exotic Eurasian cast, part Hawaiian, with a nose that carried a perky tilt from some Caucasian ancestry. "King of the Grapes," Kailani said. "My grandfather was called King of Taro, the plant we used to make poi. He lived in Honolulu." "Then we are royalty," he exclaimed. His face flickered joyfully like a candle. "I am real royalty," she boasted, "but I deign to call you cousin." "Then we are prince and princess." He jumped up and took her hand. "Come, let us run and reign." They scampered like children, laughing, zigzagging in and out of the water. She would never have been able to keep up with them if he hadn't been holding her hand. His feet lifted from the ground as if in flight. Nimble, quick, lunging, turning, leaping, they flew together down the edge of the shore, up through the foliage and trees, darting in and around picnic tables, finally collapsing under a great coconut palm. "You're faster than a beam of light," she panted. "And you are a dazzling sprite of grace," he countered. He took her hand. "I see your fingers were created for harps and instruments with strings. But your hands, they are the hands of a dancer, a weaver, a spinner of the finest filaments of gold." Like an enchantment, sapphire pools gleamed in his eyes. "And you," she found herself saying, "are the master of the spoken line, a teller of tales, the god of games, the alchemist of words." Afternoon passed into twilight as they continued their light, fanciful bantering, charged with jubilant energy. They watched dazed, as if for the first time the sky arched over them with gentle strands of pinks, oranges, purples, the island's final act of loveliness before nightfall. "Did you want to see my place?" he asked almost shyly. "I think I have a pizza in the freezer." "I'm starving," she said. They stared at one another. Everything they did seemed ordinary, and at the same time otherworldly. Sometimes Kailani felt like they were acting parts they'd played many lifetimes before. "What is your name?" she whispered, almost as if she already knew the answer. "Mercury," he said.
Beautiful. That was Jean Wong reading from her just published book called Sleeping with the Gods, Immortal Stories. Oh, Jean, you read that so beautifully. And I love every detail in it. When she first discovers the sapphire in his eyes, and then later you refer back to it. Beautifully done.
Uh-huh.
Oh, congratulations. It's a lovely book.
Thank you.
Jean, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, that your listeners would like to know about you or your work?
Well, it's a lot of fun to write, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to read. I just hope that people won't be put off with the idea that this is about Roman and Greek gods, and it's some kind of boring, thing under some tomb. It's definitely not. These are all contemporary situations, and I hope readers will be able to connect to it in their own personal lives.
I hope so too, and the hard work that you put into the writing makes it easy for the reader, and the writer does the work and the reader gets to enjoy it. So thank you so much for putting together this book, and I look forward to more of your writing.
Well, thanks so much.
And thanks so much for coming in. I've been talking to Jean Wong. Her last name is Wong, W-O-N-G, spelling it so you'll be sure to get to the website where you can find out how to get her book. You can also get it on Amazon. And we're working on getting it in the local bookstores. Jean is putting it in the local libraries, and I'm sure the word will spread. Yeah. Thanks, Jean.
Hestia, the goddess of hearth and home, known for her mild, gentle personality. The miso was perfect. Mr. Odo made a little sound with his teeth as he gave the cloudy broth a stir. Hestia smiled, her hands folded on her lap. "You are getting so fat lately," a low titter came trickling from her throat as her hand covered her mouth. "You don't have to make all those noises on my account. I know you like anything I cook." Mr. Oda did not reply. He knew if he started talking, it would only encourage her. Actually, she wasn't really supposed to be sitting at table with him, but it was comforting to have her company during meals. When his wife died 2 years ago, he remembered how surprised he was at the painful texture of his loneliness. After his retirement and 70th birthday, he gave in to family pressure and brought home the very product that had made his company famous. Hestia rose, her chair scraping the floor. She started to ladle more miso into his bowl. No, Mr. Odo covered it with his head. "Please, very good. Not that hungry today." "You always say that, but then you end up stuffing yourself." She pushed a dish of tofu and vegetables towards him. "Here, pour that down the hatch." Her voice went up a pitch. Mr. Odo frowned. "Have you been watching American TV again?" "Oh, no, I am much too busy." Hestia's eyes clicked up in alarm. Her lower lip turned downward in a little pout. She really was quite adorable. He had to admit he'd grown fond of her. It would be hard to trade her in. Not only that, there would be talk. After all, it was his company that had created the first viable companion, not some clunker that could just turn, bend, and lift, but someone with a personality and intelligence to match its physical dexterity. His advertising team had been brilliant. They had named her Hestia after the one Greek goddess who had been so pliable and accommodating that there wasn't even a story about her in Greek literature. Hestia was responsible for tending the hearth and keeping order at home. Her quiet domesticity never warranted a myth concerning any of her actions. In these times of change, with Japanese women wanting to join the workforce, the public demand for his company's product had been overwhelming. Still, she needed adjustment. She was, how to put it, off-center, not quite not harmonious enough. Mr. Oda was getting closer to the source of the problem. It was that circuit board he'd ordered from California. Those renegade engineers had too much independence. In Japan, what would be viewed as excessive, Americans considered artistic. As his mind began to remap her circuitry, Hestia cried out much too loudly, "Are you going to shut me down again tonight?" This was another flaw. She had become anxious about bedtime. She seemed to sense when she was about to be shut down and didn't understand the concept of rest. "Hestia," Mr. Odo lowered his voice, his words steady and patient, "remember how important it is to have some time off." "You old goat, you need to rest. House very messy. Hestia needs to clean at night." "Hestia?" He fingered the remote control. He didn't like to overuse the sleep button. Hestia shrugged her shoulders and went into the kitchen. He saw the pale blue hue of her ears, an indication that she was mildly unhappy. This was a recent feature for customers who were alarmed about the knee incident in Osaka. A faulty male model had kicked an elderly woman in the knee, badly tearing her cartilage. Follow-up studies indicated the woman had been most abusive, calling him names such as tin head and dumb droid, and the android had built up an excessive amount of heat, triggering resentment. Now ears gave an indication of their emotional state. Green was neutral and placid, but colors on the far end of each spectrum were to be avoided. A mild blue was okay, as you wanted the robot to have a certain level of frustration that would stimulate problem-solving and learning. But a gray or black was a danger sign with anger and aggression and imminent possibility. Similarly, yellow indicated energy and buoyancy, a healthy sign, yet a bright orange or red was undesirable. This meant extreme happiness and could lead to unpredictable levels of attachment and longing. Red was a color that filled Mr. Oda with the most distaste. He was fastidious in his habits and lifestyle and dreaded any sort of excess. The challenge was to construct a bot that had enough heart to be empathetic, but not so impassioned that feelings got in the way of service. The most desirable design was nuance, depth, subtle, like fresh spring air, light and refreshing, never turning to blow harshly in your face and make your eyes blink.
Thank you, Rosemary Manchester and Jean Wong.